Hi, welcome to the Get Strong and Healthy podcast. My name is Anna Clow. Thank you for being here. Today, we have a special guest joining us, Megan Hardy. Megan and I connected through a online fitness coaches mastermind group, and we just decided to jump on a podcast together and just share some value to you guys. So I'm really excited to have you on today, Megan, and chat about what we're gonna talk about. But first, I would love to hear if you could just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Yes. Well, hi. And Anna, thank you so much for having me on the show. I appreciate that because I know that's a big deal. I have my own podcast and I'm like, who you have on your show is a big deal and who you trust with your audience. So thanks for having me. And yeah, I'm Megan Hardy and I have my own coaching company. It's called Fitness Uncharted. And how that got started is really my own personal story and experience with my own body and relationship with food. I feel like that's probably the case with like most coaches. We start this thing because of our own experience with it. And we're like, good or bad or ugly, we've made it through something that then we want to help others do the same thing. So for me, I struggled really badly with binging and restricting back in my really like I'd say late high school through college days and even post grad was when it was like at its worst. And I was the classic cardio queen, doing lots of exercise and cardio, restricting calories and food during the day. And then I would have like massive binges at night, like large binging episodes. And, then the next day I would feel awful about myself, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally too, and go back right into restrict mode. So it was just that vicious cycle for many years. And while I had that poor relationship with food, I also didn't have the body composition that I wanted for like what I felt was working so hard for. And because I was just a hamster on a wheel trying to maintain, and I was like, how do I still look? I was kind of that quote unquote skinny fat where I'm like, how do I still not look fit for how much working out I do? Like, this is insane. But it wasn't until I actually started, which will be a part of our topic today, doing more intentional strength training, doing actually a little less cardio, eating more food more consistently, focusing on fueling my body, repairing my relationship with food and getting to like the more of the deep root issues with some of that there, that I actually started to see the body composition changes. And I was actually working out less, but seeing better results. And I was like, that is very counterintuitive. That does not make any sense, but it worked. And so it took me many years to get to that point. And that's where I was like, I want to help other women do the same thing, where you don't only have, the physique that you feel confident with, but you also have the food freedom part as well. And you have like that fitness, I say like fitness life balance, where it's like, I don't feel like I have to skip out on, girls' night, or like I have to track my food when I go out to eat with my husband or whatever. Like you have actual social life balance in a real life outside of having a, sexy body. Cause I'm like, what's the point of having a great physique if you feel like you're a slave to your nutrition or, your diet or whatever. So then I started Fitness Uncharted, and that's what I do now is try to help women do the same thing for themselves.
I love it so much and love that you just talked about how getting more efficient with your training, being more effective within your training was a key for you because I find that to be like mind blowing. When I started training people, is some clients they would come see me like just once a week, and outside of that, didn't think about exercise or anything. And then we're seeing great progress, along the way. And I was like, wow, you actually don't need to be in the gym 4 or 5 days a week. You know, I have many of my clients, they train 2 days a week, 3 days a week. And with doing things the right way, with being effective within our sessions is really the key to making progress. And so what would you say was the thing that like unlocked this for you, and what were your realizations along your journey that really started to help you realize, wow, okay, this is what I need to do instead to be more effective and to really see the results that I want to see within the gym?
Yeah, it was definitely, there wasn't like a exact light bulb moment. I've actually done several podcasts recently where I'm like, someone asked me that. They were like, was it like a switch or was it like a longer process? It was like definitely a process and a journey where a part of it was unintentionally just not focusing on the scale. So for a long time, I wanted to be the same weight that I was in high school for God knows why, whatever reason. I don't know why, as women, we have oftentimes that certain number. And it's like, I'm now today, well, now I'm pregnant. So I've put on more weight currently, but prior to getting pregnant, I was sitting like 30 pounds heavier than that weight that I thought I needed to be. But I'm like, it felt leaner and stronger and more shredded and healthier relationship with food now than I was 30 pounds lighter. But for me, that transition was focusing on more strength training than cardio, focusing on fueling my body. And then also, I hate to give him too much credit, but around that time, I met my now husband in the gym. Actually, it was one of those gym relationships that actually worked out. But, it was kind of just more fun, like focusing on strength goals and getting stronger. It was like it just kind of naturally removed my focus so much from the scale, which helped me in the long run. Because if you had told me, you know, over a decade ago that I would have put on 30 pounds to get where I am today, and you could have told me you're going to be happier and healthier and look better and all these things. But if you had told me I'd put on 30 pounds, I'd probably be like, no, I'm not doing that. Like I'd be like, no, that's too scary. It's not worth it. But it really is. But thankfully, through that process and journey, wasn't focusing on the scale. So it was just focusing on getting stronger. And then as I started to see those benefits of it, I'm like, oh, I am getting leaner. I'm like, oh, I see muscle definition. And I can eat what I want in a lot, in moderation and not have to worry about it. And then, of course, I'd step on the scale at the doctor's or whatever, and I'd be like, oh, shoot, I'm, at this point, 15 pounds heavier than I was the last time I looked. But I'm like, but I like how I look and feel. So it's fine. So it was kind of that process and transition, but definitely stepping away from the scale was a huge piece of that.
Yeah, for me as well, like the aesthetic goals is what got me started, and I think is what gets a lot of us started within fitness. And then you get to a point where maybe that stops driving you, or maybe it becomes like a toxic, unhealthy sort of place that you get to. And I see so many people go through this where it becomes unhealthy and then transitioning into performance goals, leaning into strength, whatever it is that really interests you in like the performance side of things, to sort of measure your progress in that way. Has It was so powerful for me in my journey and sort of helped me now get back to a place where I'm like, oh, I can pursue aesthetic goals and not let it, get to this unhealthy place, and just have done a lot of work on, relationship with food, relationship with, yourself and your body. And I think that's like the journey for so many of us, is like sometimes we like go to these extremes and we got to sort of like swing that pendulum to, find somewhere in the middle.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And like having those non-aesthetic goals to focus on is just so helpful when because then you're like the byproduct, if you're getting stronger and like you're improving your deadlift or your pull up or whatever, a byproduct of that is probably, if your nutrition's where it needs to be, gonna be an aesthetic byproduct too of your body's gonna change in that process. But it can make it so much more enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Focusing.
Totally agree. So, tell our audience, what are the keys to training effectively? How do you train in a way where we're seeing progress week after week? We're really seeing the changes within our strength, within our body that we're looking to see. Maybe speaking to someone who maybe they've been working out for years now, maybe they're doing classes, maybe they're just like, I've, stalled out, I'm not really seeing progress, and I don't really know why. What are kind of the things that you'd say to someone like that with what the keys are and what they need to change?
Yeah, I just got off a client call talking about this topic as far as her workouts because, it's like one thing to check off the box. And even if, that might sound even like way too flippant of like you're like, well, that's not me. I'm not just checking off the box. But in some ways, you may not even realize it that that's what you're doing because you're sweating or you feel like you're working hard. But when we are talking about specifically strength training or building more muscle or looking more, toned and fit and athletic, one part of that is progressive overload and making sure that we are increasing intensity over time. And that could look many different ways, but we can't just show up and doing the same thing week after week, even if we are sweating and huffing and puffing, whatever. If we're just doing the same things, then we're going to keep the same results. So, a part of it is the progressive overload piece. I'd be looking at that with them. The client I mentioned, one way you can kind of tell if, if your strength training session is the intensity or where it needs to be is your RPE or your rate of perceived exertion. So, that's looking at like on a scale of 1 to 10, like how quote unquote hard was this set or this workout. And she was rating her workouts like a 6 out of 10, which is technically like quote unquote somewhat hard. And I was like, okay, this is a point for a moment for education. Like, why are these only somewhat hard? If I were to do this exact workout, I could make it hard, like, right? Like 8 or 9 out of 10 hard. So why is it only a 6 out of 10? And so it's figuring that out where maybe it's for you because you want to be in that like 8 or 9 out of 10 range where that's your rate of perceived exertion. It's really challenging. Or RIR, which is reps in reserve, is another way to look at it. You want maybe 1 or 2 reps left in the tank. So that means like you could only probably have done 1 or 2 more reps with good form before completely failing the lift or the exercise. If you get to, let's say you were going for 10 reps and you get to rep 10 and you could have done 5 to 10 more reps, we need to change something to make it more intense. One, it could be increasing the weight. That's what most people think when we talk about progressive overload is increasing weight, which that is a huge one. You can be more effective in less time if you increase weight. So whether you want to do 50 reps or 5 reps, those last couple of reps should be challenging. So you're going to save time if you do the 5 reps and the fourth and fifth rep are challenging versus having to do, the 48th, 49th, and 50th rep being really challenging. But weight is one, so making sure you're using the right weight. And then also you can use progressive overload in other forms. So over time that might be increasing volume, so just more reps or more sets. This is something you can't keep increasing over and over again because like if you're already doing 4 or 5 sets, like what are you going to do like 10 sets? Just you have to play around with the volume and that's where the weight and volume comes in because no one has time to be in the gym for 2 hours doing a ton of volume. Or at least I don't. But another thing you can do is you can decrease your rest time or your rest periods. That's another form of progressive overload. Increasing frequency. So let's say if you are, we were just talking earlier about, the person who's maybe only needs to train once or twice a week. And that could be plenty. Like, seriously, that could be enough for you. But maybe you have a certain goal and maybe increasing your frequency of to 3 times a week. That could be the edge or something that could help you out, right? So frequency is one. Again, there is such a thing as too much. So a lot of the clients I work with are like working out, already 5 and 6 and 7 days a week. And if anything, we have to pull back or, we're not going to add more frequency because I'm like, you shouldn't work out 7 days a week. But frequency is one. And then time under tension. That's the last one I think I have on my list is just slowing down the movement. So that's where I give the example of group fitness classes. Most group fitness classes I don't consider personally like super challenging in the muscle fatigue strength training department. But you guess what? I could make it really challenging with 2 pound weights if I just slow down the movement. So, slowing things down, focusing on the eccentric part of the lift, that would be like where you're lowering the weight. All of those are forms of progressive overload that when you show up to your workout, I know it might seem like a lot to think about depending on how new or not someone is to their training. But it's like if you just focus on one of those things, okay, I'm just going to increase the weight a little bit today, or I'm just going to slow down this movement a little bit today. that's all. You don't need to do all of this at once. It's like just add in one little element, and then you're no longer just showing up doing the same workouts, checking off the box. So that's one piece. And then of course, separately, the whole nutrition side of things. But on the training side, that's what I'd be looking at.
Yes. And my favorite way to sort of like showcase the importance of training hard and progressively overloading is thinking about if you go and lift the same 5 pound weight, for your bicep curls every week, and you can already do that, it's not giving your body any reason to change. It's not sending the signal that we need to send to progress you, to tell your body like, oh shoot, I need to improve, I need to grow back stronger so that next time we can be better, so we can survive whatever the heck she's doing, type of signal. That's really what we're going for, is we want to stress the body to where we are creating the adaptations that we want to see. And that's where a lot of people go wrong. Is yes, all movement is awesome. Love, just getting you moving, but you really don't have to do as much exercise as a lot of people might sort of lead on. Is that we just need to be really effective in what we're doing, especially with lifting. And another thing too is, I think a lot of us in the fitness industry, we're so big on training optimally and training hard and just recovering and training maybe 4 or 5 plus days a week. But for, the average person, it's like you really, just like we've been talking about, don't need that much. And especially if you're stressed out, if you have, really crazy, hectic life, like it's almost even better a lot of the times to train less. And just like you were saying, Megan, if there's someone who comes to me and they're training really hard, they're working out like 6 days a week and they're really stressed and they're like, gosh, I'm not seeing any progress. It's like sometimes actually the answer to your progress is doing less. Maybe it's doing less, but doing it better. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, and so that's really where this concept of training hard and just progressively overloading your body comes in. And it's so, so cool to see yourself get better week after week, even in the small ways. Like that's what I tell people, is use that as your like benchmark of progress and like what to get excited about. A lot of the times, we're keeping on a similar, same sort of program for maybe like on average, like 6 weeks, to make sure we have time to really progress you within the movements. So get excited about your progress with each movement and not like, oh, I just want to switch things up because I'm bored. It's like, let's get excited about your progress. And that's when I have clients who are leaning into that, that's when stuff can be really fun.
Yes.
So, yeah, like
Yes.
another thing that you hear about a lot is this this thing that goes around like, oh, lifting light weights is the thing that's going to tone you, and or you're going to build long lean muscle. I'm like, what?
What
Um
is that?
yeah, so I would love to hear you speak on this a little bit, but just to share, like, first off, it's not really a thing to build long, lean muscle. We either build muscle or we don't build muscle. That's kind of how that works. And so,
Preach.
what we're doing when we're you can lift lighter weights, but if you can make that intense enough to produce the stimulus that we need. Maybe we're going super slow, we're going on a really big squeeze, maybe doing higher rep. Okay, great, fine. Lighter weight is can work. But the key is to just have that intensity to be able to send our body that signal. But if we're not sending that signal, we're just like getting in, random movements and not really like pushing ourselves. That's not really going to do much for you. And it's probably going to be a little bit more of a waste of time. I'd rather you be just like walking instead, and then just getting in your few hard training sessions. But would love just any of your thoughts or what you typically say around that.
Oh, I'm just like, yes, preach, keep going. No, because it's so true like that. I even use it myself. It's kind of a marketing tactic, to be honest. It's more so, and it's because people can relate to lean muscle. Women want lean muscle, right? But to your point, like you can either build it or lose it, muscle hypertrophy or muscle atrophy. building or losing it or maintaining it. And there is no such thing as building a lean muscle. It's you have build the muscle, and then if you want to look leaner, you need the muscle and then to pull off body fat, which is largely your nutrition. So that's when if someone says, I got bulky strength training, I'm like, it wasn't your strength training. You got bulky because we have more body fat than is optimal or ideal for you. Like it's, they're separate, but that's where I also one point as far as your workouts too that I was going to make was like lifting for strength because it's really like even what you shared about, for some people it might be backing off or it's just working smarter, not harder. Yes, you're going to have to work hard too, but like you can work smarter and lifting for strength is one way to do that because when you are getting stronger, what are you doing? You're building the muscle. So instead of thinking like, how can I look lean or build lean muscle? It's like we can either build it or not build it. And if we build it, you're going to have more of that lean muscular aesthetic and physique when we're done. And when we pull off that outer layer of body fat, you're going to have that muscle to show for it. And not to mention, muscle is very calorically expensive for your body. So you're going to be able to burn a little bit more. You're going to have a higher metabolism. Your body's going to respond better to carbs and things like that because of having more muscle on its frame. So that's where, I'm like, don't be afraid of lifting heavy. Don't be afraid you're not going to bulk up. Even it's funny because, over the last decade plus, I've built a lot of muscle. A lot of that 30 pounds I put on was muscle mass over time. And because I came from really not having any, I had my skinny noodle arms, and very like I was thinner but soft, right? So I've put on a lot of muscle. A lot of women, especially some of the older generations, they might talk with me or be asking me questions, or we might be talking about working together, and they're like, "Yeah, I think like you're so beautiful, but I don't want to like get that much muscle or like look like that much, And I'm like, "Don't worry, you won't. Like it doesn't happen that easily, and if it did." Like every guy who wants to be bulky or jacked would be bulky or jacked. It's not that easy to do. So if you will really dedicate and focus on building the strength, you'll build the muscle. And then we need to focus on the nutrition piece separately to look lean or pull off body fat. So,
Yeah, by the way, for anyone who's just listening and can't see Megan's delts right now, I'm like, geez, girl, it's so fire.
thanks, girl. Well, I appreciate that because it's crazy, even 24 weeks pregnant, and I've definitely lost muscle already during this process. So that's going to be a big focus for me coming back is not losing the baby weight. I'm like, I don't care. It's getting my strength back where it needs to be. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I always speak to like with clients and when this comes up, like I'll make a joke like I've been trying to get bulky for many years now and it hasn't worked yet. So don't worry. Um,
Don't worry.
yeah, no, but yeah, it's really nutrition is going to be the biggest piece here. And also remembering like you're not going to just wake up overnight one night and be like, oh my gosh, I'm the Hulk. And like,
No, no.
so yeah, you'll be able to pace things along the way. If you're like, hey, I don't like the look of like my whatever quads. Okay, cool. We can sort of like start training in a different way. Like, but yeah, you mentioned
Yes.
like just using just like with marketing and using different words. And I totally use like the word toned at times, especially if a client will come to me and sort of like say that word because I think people sort of have this idea in their mind of like, oh yeah, what that means. I think a lot of coaches and trainers would be very quick to be like, toned is not actually a thing. And
Yeah.
as much as it really kind of isn't, it's the way that people can kind of understand what you mean. It's like, yes, we're gonna build muscle and lean you out. But yeah, so talk to me about women who maybe are in their 30s, 40s, 50s. Is, this building muscle thing as,
Mhm.
doable for them? And kind of speak to, are there any differences with when it comes to building muscle, how to do it, and then also like why to do it, the importance of it? Maybe does that change as we age? And I would love to just hear a little bit more on that because I know that that's a demographic that we are speaking to, that most of my podcast listeners are. A lot of my clients are like busy moms, type of demographic, and same with, I think, who you work with. Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It becomes even more important
Yes.
as we age to answer that right off the bat. Yeah, that's where, we are losing after you're 30, after you turn 30, basically, you're losing muscle or potentially losing muscle at a faster rate. It's like 0.8% or 1% a year potentially. And it's like, that's pretty significant if you don't do anything about it. And that's where, not only are you looking at it for maybe your goal is the physique side of things. And that is a beautiful goal. When I've talked with someone, they're like, I know it's superficial. I just want to look better or I feel confident in my bikini or whatever. I'm like, I love it. I'm like, I think that's a great goal. You don't have to clarify anything for me. Like, I think that's awesome, even if it's just the physique goal. But even more than that, like muscle is very metabolically active. It helps out our endocrine system. So, like, talk about women's hormones and perimenopause and menopause, as far as like even thinking testosterone, like building more muscle can help with that. A lot of women struggling with, testosterone or estrogen, progesterone balance, all of those things, like having the right amount of muscle versus body fat on your body can help. Body fat is more estrogenic. And so oftentimes we're living in a world where, estrogen dominance is getting thrown around all the time. And a lot of people genuinely struggling with some of those types of symptoms. Perimenopause and menopause, you're just having things tank, particularly, once you get to menopause, you're having those hormones tank. Having more muscle on your frame will help with these things. And then, not to mention, also osteopenia, osteoporosis. That's where I have actually a girlfriend who, literally one of my closest friends, I cannot get this chick to work out to save my life. Like, she's just like, that's your thing. That's not my thing. I don't enjoy working out, whatever. And I'm like, it's not even about, she's very lean and healthy. She eats a very nutritious diet, but she can't, like, she actually was visiting me not too long ago and she got exhausted after a 1 mile walk. I don't even think we went a whole mile straight. And I was like, not gonna name her by name, but I'm like, homegirl, bestie. We should be able to do this. Like, you're in your, you know, early 30s. Like, just having that strength, the functionality for everyday life. I was like, it's not even about aesthetics. You look awesome just like you are. It's the functionality component. Like, do you want to be able to get up out of a chair when you're 60, 70? And then your bone health and bone density. So that also can decrease over time. And strength training is huge on helping counteract some of that. And creating those stressors on your body with strength training will help you build up the bone density too. So that's where I'm like, for my menopausal ladies, I'm like, this becomes even more important, and especially important if you do have a fat loss or weight loss goal. So, Anna, I imagine a lot of clients you've worked with or talked to, like, they probably are like, I'd love to lose the weight or body fat and then tone up and then build muscle. Do you hear that?
Yes. And yeah, it's definitely something where we want to be training, we want to be strength training, the whole time. Ideally, it's just going to put you in such a better place to have that muscle on your frame. And just like you were talking about earlier, like having that shape too. I see people who go on these big weight loss journeys and maybe they lose a lot of weight, but they actually look kind of the same. Or sometimes even worse because they've lost so much muscle, or they're equally losing muscle to how much body fat they're losing, and they look the same. They're just a smaller version of themselves. And so, like, keeping as much muscle as you can when you're going on that fat loss journey is key, and is something we definitely want to focus on.
Yes. Oh, and like you saying that, like, yeah, that's where I find, for women who are like, I just want to lose the weight first, then they end up a smaller version of what they look like before. And they're like, I still don't like how I looked or how I look. And now the hard part is because they weren't focusing on strength training or preserving muscle during their weight loss or fat loss journey, preserving or building it, then they've lost a lot of muscle in that process too. And that also further hurts your metabolism some. And if you're going to gain weight back, which is like the hardest time to maintain is right after a diet or fat loss phase, you need to be strategic about that too and have an exit strategy so you can actually maintain your results. But if you are going to, yo-yo, or if your weight's going to swing back the other way, it is not going to be by putting on more muscle. You're going to end up with more body fat replacing the muscle that you lost. from your fat loss phase. So like, for a lot of women who are struggling with their hormones, hormones all over the place with perimenopause or tanked and in full blown menopause, oftentimes it's like, I just want to get this weight off. And like, while I understand that, I'm like one of the best things you could do for sustainable weight loss and health and results is focusing on the muscle component while we are also trying to pull off body fat. It's going to help you so much in the long run.
Yeah. And this cycle that you're talking about of you lose weight and maybe losing a lot of muscle and then you gain back sometimes like even more body fat, like imagine, the people who yo-yo over and over and over and we keep doing that and it's almost like it leads you to a space where you're like, gosh, I almost feel like giving up. Like, what's the point? I just, I'm ending up worse than I started. And it's like sometimes like you need to change your strategy. And the same yo-yo dieting of starving yourself and going on this fad diet and, like not training is something that we need to break. And so yeah, getting into strength training and really good progressive overload is the best thing that you can do for your body, no matter how old you are. I can't even
Mm.
express like it makes me sad when people are like, oh, I'm like in my 50s. Is it too late for me? And it's like, no, it's never too late. Never, never, never. There's people in their
Mm-mm.
70s, 80s, however old, you can make progress. You can have so many benefits that come from resistance training. So, yeah. And just
So
like you
true.
said, it goes so much beyond how you look. It goes into thinking about old age and like how we move, but just like you said, because I think it's easy to forget about that, but then all of a sudden years go by and you're maybe, struggling to do things that you used to. And so strength training, moving your body is going to be the way to really prevent that.
And you're so absolutely correct. Like it's never too late. I think there's just that for a lot of people, there's kind of like that fix versus growth mindset of like, I mean, now I've just passed my prime or okay, well, I lose muscle every year after 30. Well, I guess I'm doomed because I'm 60. Like I actually just had a client graduate our program. She was with us for a year. She's 65 and she had done prior to joining Optavia or Optavia, however, I know people say it different ways, and lost weight. But she was like, I was just skinnier, a smaller version of myself and soft and had no strength. And when she joined with us, she was like, what's the point of even losing weight if you have no strength left to show for it? And by the time she graduated, she was back down lower than what she had been when she had done Optavia weight wise, but also had the strength component in there. And she's like, this is the best gift that her words verbatim, or the best gift you can give your kids or your grandkids is your health. Like it's not selfish to invest in yourself or to do this, and it's never too late. Like that is the best gift. And I'm like, I can speak personally. I'm like, I'm about to have, give my mom and dad another grandbaby. And I'm like, the best gift you guys could give me is your health and the best kid, gift you could give your new grandson coming. So yeah, it's never too late.
Yeah, there's a saying I saw online the other day. It was like, so you say you're willing to die for your family, but are you willing to get healthy for them? I was like, wow, that's actually a really good like little, reframe.
Really good.
But yeah, so I think this was such a great just chat, and I kind of want to like maybe nerd out on some fun talking about like how to build specific strength for especially core, upper back, and just like some of those areas that I found for me to be a little bit stubborn when it comes to strength and muscle and like how I was able to break through those things. And hopefully you listeners can get some good insights from this.
Yeah, yeah. Which one do you want to touch on first?
Yeah. So, I mean, back in my journey, I remember my upper back being something that was really hard to like establish a mind muscle connection with and like
Mm.
squeeze. And I think for a lot of people, that's like a little bit of a stubborn thing. It's at the start. And so I was definitely able to make great progress with just like a bodybuilding style type split. However, nothing built my upper back like heavy deadlifting did. Oh my gosh, when I started getting into a little bit of like that powerlifting stuff and playing around with that, and I was deadlifting heavy and doing, more volume and just really getting strong, like my upper back just blew up and I felt so amazing. Like I just had so much strength within my upper back, and that was just a really great way that's established my strength and has helped me a ton just, avoiding imbalances. I think it's very common that we are living in front of ourselves with everything that we do, of maybe we're cooking or we're on the computer, and then these back muscles get forgotten about. And I'm seeing, personally, I've had pain because of having weakness in my mid back, but a lot of the times I'm seeing this with clients of there's just that imbalance, there's that weakness. This is even something like with my boyfriend that I'm like noticing with him a little bit, with he's always working in front of him with what he does. And so I'm starting to tell him like, hey, I think you should do like twice as much pulling as you're doing pushing within your training, just like to kind of balance this out. And so if that's you, that's what I would recommend. Do more pulling than you do pushing. But yeah, deadlifts, nothing compared to building my upper back. And I remember listening to Mind Pump podcast years ago. And Adam said that. He's like, deadlifts built my back like nothing else. And then I experienced it. I was like, yes.
Yes, yes, sir. Were you doing traditional or RDLs or what kind of deadlift or all the deadlifts?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of conventional. My coach had me doing like stiff leg deadlifts, RDLs. I worked with a powerlifting coach for like 3 months and I wanted to do a competition, but at the same time, my hormones and stress, everything was kind of going to crap. So I've been on very much like a healing journey and diving into the more like holistic health side of things for a while. But that was really cool while it lasted. Definitely wanting to sort of build up some of that strength again soon, but
Yes. Well, I could also like speak to that, like the deadlifts. Like, I mean, really like in to your question about building core or back strength, especially upper back and like honestly, compound lifts in general. Like I for the longest time, people were like, how'd you get abs? And I'm like, compound lifts and nutrition. Like straight up. I've never been a particularly like crunch girl. Well, I was in my cardio days. But when I started actually focusing on strength training, I was like, I don't even program in like abs particularly, but my exercises are abs because of the compound lifts and engaging your core through that. Like if you are engaged while you're doing those movements, like you are working that core and like compound lifts. So think things for anyone listening, like your deadlifts, squats, it's any of those movements working multiple joints. Pull ups are another great one, shoulder press, bench press, rows, things like that. But those compound lifts, engaging your core, you're going to be working your core, but then also you're just getting the most bang for your buck working those multiple joint movements. So like compound lifts are a huge one for both of those. I was actually talking with a girl from my gym back home because I shared with you, Anna, that I've moved from Virginia to Utah. And it was a girl that went to my gym there in Virginia, but she was like, she was postpartum with her third child. And she was like, I feel like ever since, having kids, it just like, it's really hard to get my core strength back. And so she's been doing more of the like Smith machine squats. And I was like, one thing I'd recommend is even starting to transition. She was well past the like initial postpartum period. So we weren't concerned about that. But I was like, I would transition it into more, free weight or barbell like squats. So that I was like, because the Smith machine can be great for that stability, but also it can kind of take out that connection for you to be engaging your core so much because it's stabilizing you versus it getting in the rack and having a free barbell or if you're using dumbbells at home or whatever, you have to engage your core to stabilize more. I was like, even if you go super lightweight, which I know is really humbling, she's a big gym girl, you know, has it and, definitely not a newbie to fitness. So I was like, I know it's humbling. Like literally, if you just use the bar at first, like, and really just focus on your core and engaging your core through the movement will help tremendously. And you're like, then you can obviously start adding weight and progressive overload after that to come. But just doing that will help so much. And then another thing too to focus on is even just that mind muscle connection. Like you mentioned, Anna, like that can be a challenge for some people at first to like engage the right muscle that you should be working. So if you start, first of all, if you're starting an exercise and you don't know which muscle group it should be working, figure that out first. So you know what you should be focusing on. But then if you do some kind of accessory movement beforehand, it can help to engage the right muscle. So think something like using a hip band or like a resistance band to do some like a little glute kick, glute kickbacks or something like that before you go into, let's say if you are trying to focus on your glutes during a squat, that can help kind of engage your glutes to start with before you go into the movement. Typically, you'll want to do like your heavier compound lifts first so you have the most strength. But if you find you have a hard time with that connection, it can help because you're kind of just like you're sending that signal and you're like, okay, you're using that accessory movement to send the signal. And then that's what's going to be, more engaged during during your compound lift or exercise. And then another thing that can help too to focus on that is, and that mind muscle connection is touch. So one thing like you might feel funny doing it, but like if you're trying to focus on like for a bicep curl, really working the bicep, it's like, okay, touch or actually touch it and like feel like and use that mind muscle connection just by touching the muscle where you're trying to work. If I'm doing like a shoulder press, actually feeling for it or looking at yourself in the mirror too and thinking about it. That's where, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to be vain, looking at myself in the mirror. I'm like, it actually can help with your form and your mind muscle connection. Like that's why wearing tank tops to the gym or things where you can actually see the muscle can actually be really helpful. And then Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's classic for saying like really envisioning what's happening in your body. So he's like, I don't remember the exact quote he has. I don't know if you know it, but where he's like, imagine your muscle like turning into a mountain or whatever he says, like where it's like, you're really thinking like, what are you working and what are you doing? Like your bicep turning into a mountain, right? It's like using that mind muscle connection and visualization is really helpful to engage the right muscle groups versus again, just like going through the motion and completing the reps. So I found those to be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wild how like there's science to show the benefits of mind muscle connection, just basically thinking about the muscle that you're looking to work and how effective it can be. It sounds weird, but it definitely does work. So try it out if you haven't already.
Yeah,
And then yeah,
it
core was another one for me that I had the weakest core. I felt like I was doing all the ab exercises. It like wasn't really working. I wasn't really seeing great progress until I was able to start challenging myself with those heavier compound lifts, with doing deadlifts, squats, learning how to really brace the core. All those things really, really changed the game for me in terms of my core strength. And then, little side note, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will get your core
Ooh.
like rock solid. Have you ever heard of Jiu-Jitsu?
Jiu-jitsu, yes. I don't know if I know the differentiation between Brazilian jiu-jitsu or if it's one and the same,
Yeah,
but
it's the same thing. It's
okay.
that's where it originates from. But yeah, like the whole time, if you ever get into training jujitsu, it's really fun and it's a way to kind of learn self-defense. But the most of the time you're on your back and your head is up. Like the whole class, we had to like have our head up and you're engaging your core like the whole time and you're fighting off of the ground or you're just getting in all these weird positions that you're using your core a lot. And so that I feel like I can almost like I feel like I can flex like the different sections of my abs now. I'm like it's crazy how I feel like I've grown so much within my, core and it's like I feel like years ago I had this belief of, oh, I'm never gonna get lean enough to see abs. Like I'm not even gonna worry about that or think about that. But with how much I've built them, now I'm getting to a point where I'm sort of getting lean to where I'm starting to see them a little bit. And I'm like, whoa, this is kind of motivating. Like maybe
Let's go.
yeah, like I think I will be able to see them.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's pretty cool when you can just build these, muscles that you want to build. And just focusing on getting strong is such a key to bringing up some of these different muscle groups and especially focusing on the posterior chain. Like there's a saying in the strength conditioning athletic world, like the posterior chain builds the athlete. And basically, what your posterior chain is, it's like your backside, it's your upper back, it's going to be your glutes, it's going to be your hamstrings, all those muscles that are really tied into just like power and performance. And don't get me wrong, the front's important too, but someone with really strong glutes, with a really great upper back, like they're strong and you know they're strong. And so, yeah, it's really fun when you can sort of like get passionate about leaning into some of this stuff and just seeing the benefits of it and just how amazing it feels to be strong.
So good. And do your deadlifts. That's the
Yes.
key.
Deadlifts. We're gonna mic drop it there. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Megan.
Yes.
Share with our listeners, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Fitness Uncharted on social media. And then also my podcast is The Muscle Makeover. It's available wherever you like to listen. So go check that out. But yeah, that's the best way to reach me.
Amazing. All right. Thanks so much for coming on, and I hope that you and everyone else listening has a great rest of their day.
Yes, thanks, Anna. Thanks so much for having me.